Hi, this is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle. We're going to look at a reel today that I was given to fix. Somebody told me that they had purchased it on eBay and it's not working right. Well, surprise. I probably would have returned it to the seller right away rather than bother, but whatever it was turning into a bargain is going to become something more than that. Well, listen. Well, that doesn't bother me too much. That's most likely this clicker mechanism here is rubbing somehow. You can tell that it's had heavy use even though the line is removed, but this is tarred on line that's been there quite some time. And the more important issue here, you can't get it into free spool. If you notice when we do this, well, you're supposed to be in free spool, but your handle is turning. So let's find out what the issue is, why this reel failed, and see if we can't get this one back out there fishing again. So we're going to start on a Jigmaster by pulling the single screw take-apart system, and that'll open up our inside for us. Well, while I do that, I want to encourage you to subscribe to my channel if you haven't already done so. If you have done so, thank you very much for your subscriptions. They are appreciated. And if you have subscribed but you haven't hit the notification button, please go ahead and do that, because that'll let you know when I'm posting my videos. And those videos will be on topics like diagnosis of problems, why fishing reels failed, and also show you a variety of reels that are being serviced in my shop, and you can learn from them in terms of how to service them yourself and how to give reels a second chance. All right, let's take this off then. Whoa, okay. Well, that click, click, click is not the clicker. This mechanism is in pretty good condition. That's the way it should be. It's probably frozen, actually. This can be freed up. And what you want to do on that is kind of just flood it with penetrating oil like I've done here. Just set it off to the side. So there is a steel shaft between the click mechanism button on the outside and the click piece here, and a lot of times that'll rust and close up the hole in the side case. Penetrating oil will help to knock that out from a rusting standpoint. Well, this is an all too common problem on a lot of Penn reels. You've got a frozen spool here. The spool can't go in the free spool because the pinion gear is locked onto the shaft of the spool, and that happens from lack of maintenance and rust. So let's go ahead and show you how to deal with that. We're going to remove a screw. We're going to have to take the entire side plate mechanism off. Now, if you don't know how to do that, well, one, you're going to see it here, but two, if it happens on a different reel, and I've got another reel in here that's got an identical problem. It's a diagnose, and I've seen more than a few with this problem. Seen in Ocean City the other day and so on. Well, you want to get the schematic because you want to know what it is that you're taking off. For example, we took off the star adjuster and there's a little collar behind that. And we have to go over and we have to take off all pieces. The reason for that is if you tried to pull this out, where you said, oh boy, look at this. I got a space here. I can grab a screwdriver and I can pry it out. What you're going to do is you're going to bend the yoke and the internal mechanisms, the jack and the like. Well, if you bend them, well, then the parts have to be replaced. We're trying to show you how to do this without incurring any additional parts cost. This has to come off. I believe that's a 10mm nut. My good old-fashioned ratchet always sits on my desk, and it's for this nut. Or a screw. I guess it's technically a screw. And you have to remove that. Somebody asked me the other day, what is that tool? I guess they haven't seen it. It's probably from a $2 set of ratchets back in the day, so to speak. All right, we'll just leave that off to the side. 4 screws now hold the rest of this together. And this is where you got to know what's inside the reel so that as you take it apart, as things don't go according to plan, you can refer to the schematic to relocate the parts once you push them out. But again, this is not an uncommon issue. That happens far too frequently. 2 and then 1. Now normally I would tell you cup your hand and remove the bridge from the side plate. You can't do that here because the spool is in the way. Everything is loose that needs to be. You can leave the bearing on. You need to push through on the top eccentric lever. There's a spring behind there. Push that through and then pull the rest of the case off. You can see one spring has come out already. You need to kind of keep equal tension on here, and you need to push that through. Okay, now when we open it up, you can see what you should have seen, and one of the see I don't like. One of them is that this eccentric spring is all bent up, and I'm going to guess that it's bent up because somebody was trying to power out of releasing that free spool lever. This is the part I was saying, if you just simply pushed, it wouldn't work just pushing through or trying to pull the spool through, because you would bend this. This is your jack, and we can see this reel hasn't been serviced in forever. So if I was an eBay seller, or if I purchased this from an eBay seller, I'd be very disappointed. But this is showing that there's been heavy use on the reel, and that this reel hasn't been serviced. You can see the same buildup on the eccentric, same corrosion. So chances are that salt water got inside this thing. It was never cleaned up, and that's caused the problems. You should be able to remove the rest of the bridge assembly now. This is why you couldn't pull it through. There is a yoke that sits in the ridge here on that pinion gear, like that. And if you tried to pull out with this pinion gear not moving, you would bend the yoke. So this one's frozen on pretty good. Before I go too far, I want to make sure that this turns, because you're wasting your time if you've got a frozen bridge as well. Take some penetrating oil, flood it, turn off the camera and come back in a little while to see how we can get that off and restore this reel. While I'm doing that, I'm going to take the rest of the bridge assembly off, because that's got to get cleaned in the process. And what you want to do when you take that bridge assembly off is you want to remove the gear sleeve. There's a pin that holds the gear sleeve in. You can see I've used a little pick. This is your basic home Harbor Freight pick. It'll push the pin through on the other side, and you should be able to remove the gear sleeve. When you remove the gear sleeve, make sure that it is sound. Make sure you have a square side on both sides, and make sure that the threads are clear. This one looks good. A lot of times these are going to round over with a lot of use, particularly if your handle screw is loose. And based on what I saw on this reel, my guess is that it would have been rounded over, but got lucky with that one. I'm going to use a little bit of metal cleaner. This is an automotive chrome polish. Works just as good as most stuff to get some of that corrosion off that side plate. You're never going to restore this side plate in terms of the plating. The plating is gone, but you can clean it, and you can make sure that it works okay. Same thing on the back. You can see how it's been pretty much beat up there. All right. I should have gloves on at this point. I thought I was just going to do some analysis, and while I was sitting there waiting for that penetrating oil kind of do its work, I figured maybe we can move ahead a little bit. To restore the bridge, get some fishing reel oil, greases. I use Penn Precision Reel Grease, not because it's a Penn reel, but because it's a fishing reel grease. A washer when I laid my brush down. We're going to go ahead and take your gear sleeve now, push the pin back in. Sometimes you can do it by hand, sometimes you can't. And then we're going to get our anti-reverse dog. That's this piece. And when you load the anti-reverse dog over the top to compress the spring and seat on the bridge just like that. And then what you want to do is you want to put some oil behind there and make sure that it turns nice and easily, which it does. Okay, we have a washer which goes next. That's going to kind of hold the anti-reverse dog from wandering in and out. We have a series of drag washers inside the main gear. These are all in good condition, which I'm surprised at because of what I've seen with the rest of the reel. Check all of the teeth, make sure that they're clear channels. By channels I mean the little V's on the insides of the teeth. And make sure that the teeth are uniform. I just worked on a Penn reel that had broken teeth. I had a Penn spin fisher that got some damage internally and chipped out a couple of teeth. So it's not uncommon and a best practice really to go ahead and make sure that you check those teeth. Here's your gears drag setup. It starts with a fabric washer. These are HT100 drags in the system. I guess I can move that up a little bit. Fabric washer in the system. A metal washer that's round, it's called a keyed washer. It has a rectangular inside, sits against the flat sides of your gear sleeve. Another fabric, the middle one is called an eared washer, 2 points on there opposing. Glass fabric and a metal, so it goes in like this. Fabric washer first. Now these can be installed dry, or they can be installed with dry grease or fishing reel grease. If you use the grease, make sure you wipe it off. You don't want to overload the drag washers. Put back these dry, because that's not the issue with this reel. Okay, and then there's a cap washer which goes on top. That's your bridge service. Well, here we go. This is what we want to do next. We've had that sitting for a while. I'm going to see if I can move it by my hand. I was just kidding myself. I don't have Superman strength. That was kind of a thing we knew that wouldn't happen. And so we have to resort to heat. So we're going to get this nice and hot. Why are we going to do that? Well, this is a stainless gear, I believe, and it's a steel shaft. And if the two metals are different, they're going to expand at different rates. If they expand at different rates, they're going to break the rust. I use a plumber's torch. There's various things that you can use, everything from the chef's torch, etc. Keep the heat on the gear. You will see the inside start to bubble where you put that penetrating oil. So I like to heat it up like that. You don't need much heat. And then I like to put some penetrating oil right back on there to fill in and also to cool it. And you can just see, look at all of this stuff that's come out of that spool. All right, this is hot. Please remember that. We're going to take a matting. I'm going to take steel wool because I don't want to damage this main gear if I don't have to. I'm going to mat the gear by wrapping it around the steel wool. Now, this is not a circular gear. This shouldn't spin by itself. It's locked onto a shoulder on the reel. So the only way that this can come off is by going out, not in, not turning it sideways to free it. Sometimes you can work well, we just did it there. Sometimes you can work it with a screwdriver by getting it under the lip and pushing out, which we just did. Or sometimes you're going to have to use a better grip, like a pliers. I'm going to mat this with the pliers and just turn the spool and kind of walk it up, just like that. All right, that's your issue right there. The shoulders on the spool here are just encrusted with rust. That's why the gear was sticking. I'm going to do this again now. I'm just going to kind of walk that off a little bit. Remember, this is still going to be a little hot, so just be careful. I guess I've done this a few times, and I sort of know when I can touch it, I guess. All right, so once you get the stuff out, well, this should be good. It does polish up nicely. This one will be a little hot too. There with the pliers. What I want to do with this one, I want to hold the ring. I'm going to have that on the table here. It's not that hot anymore. I want to flood the internal chamber of that with the penetrating oil. Hold it. And then I'm going to run a Q-tip right through the center of this, and look what was in there. That's all the dirt and debris that was rusting in. Run it through again with the backside. This should come out cleaner. It did. We're ready for reinstall. It's that simple. All right, there's 2 more pieces that need to be cleaned up in this parade here. We noticed that there was a lot of junk and debris on this one. Steel wool, 4/0 steel wool. We'll take care of that. Again, it's not going to restore the chrome plating, but it is going to get rid of all of the corrosion. Do the same on this one. And these are actually nice homemade materials, but left to salt water and lack of maintenance, even the best is going to fail over time. I live in the Northeast. We know that with automobiles. If you're in the salt environment in the winter times, if you're not keeping them clean, especially the undercarriage, you're going to have rusted out frames, and we do. All right, those 2 are done. There's only one more piece that had that stuff on it, and that's the eccentric lever. And then I probably have to shut the camera off and go find the spring, since we know that one was gone. I'm going to shut that off. We'll come right back. Once I get that spring, we'll show you the rest of the assembly and how this one was repaired. Okay, well, we're going to learn a lot of things in this. I didn't think we were going to be doing what we did, but we did. So here's what the new spring looks like. Here's what the old one looks like. You can see that it has to be replaced. This one's just got a curly Q in it or something. But we'll show you how to replace the eccentric, how to reset that. And the good news is that the penetrating oil came through. You can see it all the way in the side of the plate, and I was able to pull back on the click ratchet or the bait alarm, and that'll get that out of the way now. So it's not going to be easily functioning yet, but it's going to be enough that if that was causing any kind of click, that's gone. And just put a little bit of grease into the side plate bearing there. I'm going to take my spool, clean this side of it, because you can see the rust on here as well. So is it a good reel? It's a good reel. Did it cost us any parts? No. But it did cost the owner of this reel, an additional service fee. Because I guess he trusted whatever the eBay seller said it was, which wasn't very good. I'm just curious if I can get this. This is old line that hasn't been changed in a long time. And what happens with this is when you don't change the line, the water comes through and accumulates, and that could be any of a number of things. Tar, fish guts, who knows. All right, I'm going to put that back on, clean up a little bit on the bottom here while I have it open in the frame. Got some grease onto the back stud there. Go ahead and put that in. And I'm going to take my grease brush and just put a little bit onto the stud where that pinion gear is going to ride. That was rusted in before. We can take that gear now and you'll just see it spins nicely in and out and spinning. Because that was stuck, I want to look at the tracks inside the teeth here, make sure that we're not loaded up with anything that's going to make the operation go poorly. Just trying to find something for the grooves. having a lot of luck. Okay, that one's good. All right, let's show you the rest of these things. You're going to learn an awful lot about how to service it and restore a Jigmaster, I guess. I worked on a lot of these. I still do. A lot of commercial fishing boats and charter boats use these in our area. Well, you kind of get used to them after a while, but you still are surprised when you find things like this. Particularly this one. This one's made in the USA. The ones that were made in China, I find a lot more issues with, and the reason I find the issues with them is that the materials have changed over time, and well, they're just not as good as the materials that used to be in these reels. All right, here's how you do the eccentric. There's a hooked end on it, and there's an eye or an opening for the hook on the back of the eccentric. Those get inserted. Next up, you're going to see that there's a stud on the side plate. You put the wire straight leg into the stud and you press down on the eccentric to seat that into the hole on the side case. Just like that. Well, that's not going to work right now. It's way out of balance. What you want to do is you need to turn this. Sometimes you can turn it by hand, sometimes you need an assist. I'm going to use an assist. You be gentle with this now. I'm going to use some needle nose pliers and I'm going to turn it till I find the point of equilibrium where the spring does not shoot back. And that's about it. It's not shooting there, but I have access now to the other side where I have to put the trip lever. Probably should have done this before. I'm trying to clean it without tripping the trip lever. But here's your trip lever now. And now you can load it properly. A lot of times some folks will actually turn these upside down because they can't get the clearance for the trip lever. Well, you can't get the clearance from the trip lever unless you do it the way I just showed you. All right. We're going to replace the screw here now. Thread these by hand. You don't want to cross strip these. Now back to my old reliable. Okay, and now you will see that the piece operates properly. Also, one of the things I see is probably the cause of all of this, or some of this. There's a piece of broken line in there. So that's probably what tangled up the, well, that's hard to see. I probably should have my gloves on. And of course it's clear line. Take my word for it, there's a piece of broken line in there if you can't see it. All right, let's just finish the assembly on this then. The two eccentric springs going here. If you didn't know that, we saw one fall out when we did the disassembly. If you didn't know that's how they went, you would consult with your schematic, find the location of it, and you would find out where that belongs. We're taking the yoke now, putting that on. That goes on the shoulder of the pinion gear. We're going to use fishing reel grease to make sure that that gets a nice coating as well. Your yoke and gear set then go on top of the springs. You press down. You take your jack. We're going to put a little bit of grease onto the eccentric here where the jack is going to ride. Put your jack on by slipping the wide spot of the jack over and pulling it in to set it, just like that. I like to install with the top side in engage mode, and then we want to grab our bridge that goes in next. Push in, and before you can do anything, you need to make sure that that gear gets through the hole there. If you're getting resistance on it, you need to pull it through with a pick or something to square it up. There's two types of screws. There's a screw that's partially threaded. Those go to the top of the reel. Those ride through the springs that we put on there. And there's two that are fully threaded. They go below. When I do this, I like to alternate high and low and east and west. So So let's do the bottom one over here and go to the top one on the other side. That'll keep the bridge square. And it'll prevent it from binding as you go through this. This one. And one on the other side. So this is like the third reel or fourth reel in just a little while that I've gotten in that's had this issue. Alright, so we're trying to put this in and it's not lining up. One of the reasons is that the jack may be a little bit out of alignment. You can always look behind, see what's going on. Just flip it back and forth a little bit, that'll square up your line. There's still a little bit of dirt on here. I'm just going to put a little bit of rod and reel cleaner onto a pad. Take off the rest. So as much as they tried to kind of hide the uses on this reel, as soon as you open it up you can see it's been a heavily used reel. And I can't speak for certainty about well, how it's going to perform. All I know is we have that free spool feature back restored, and we're going to do our best to get this one out there fishing again. So if you have any questions on this reel or any reel in particular, maybe you want to know some more information about particular manufacturers' reels or the like, if you leave them in the comment section, I'll try to answer those for you. This is the star adjuster that goes on next. Make sure it goes on nice and easy. If you're having trouble, you may be cross-stripping it, please take your time, don't force it, because if you force it and if you cross-strip it, well, you got to go replace the gear sleeve. Alright, handle goes on next. Now if we didn't take the gear sleeve off and grease that, you could put a drop of oil in there. But as long as we had the reel apart and we know that it hasn't been serviced in quite some time and that it's been heavily used and we had the opportunity, it just made all the sense in the world to go ahead and take it apart. Tighten down the handle screw, align the scallop in the screw with the hole for the nut that will hold it from rotating. Find this screw, find that screw. That's in my parts tray. Put that back on. Give it a turn. Turning pretty good. Make sure that the free spool is engaged. You can tell that because the pinion gear is moving in and out. When you go to set the reel, make sure it's in the inward position. Looks like that penetrating oil is left a little bit on there. And when I wipe that, it looks like I just wiped off some of the grease. Let's go ahead and put that back on then. Look for the hole in the side plate. That's where you know where the orientation is for the set. Before you start tightening the screw, make sure that you see the screw has sit in that hole. Tighten it down, and here we go. All right, the bearing is over tightened. Look at that. More importantly, you've got a nice turning reel. The handle's not turning in free spool. Properly lubed, ready to go fishing again. So that's it. That's how you diagnose a reel failure, and that's how you go correct it. So I hope you've enjoyed that. If you did, again, please like it and please subscribe. To our first responders and essential personnel, thank you for all it is that you do to keep us safe. To everyone, please stay safe, stay well, and stay watching. This is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle. Have a great day.